William.
Were you followed?
No, I made sure of that. Well, thank you very much for joining me here for another night market. And we have a lot to talk about. We've got VCT 2024 Pacific about to kick off. So thank you for making it to the drop point here relatively safely.
Relatively.
Now let's jump into everything that we have to talk about.
There's a lot to cover for every single team, and then the tournament itself.
We've got a bit of a different format coming into this year. We've got the kickoff leading into Madrid for the Masters, the first one, and then we've got two splits leading into Masters and Champions for the rest of the year.
The year starts off with kickoff, and this is a brand new format. We're getting our first looks at each team in kind of a tournament style rather than a full league season, and then that all builds up into Masters Madrid.
You've got 3 different groups. 2 groups of 4, 1 group of 3, all competing for those ever-important playoff spots to try to make their way into Masters.
The initial bracket stage is going to be running from the 17th to the 21st.
And then play-ins on the 22nd and the playoffs 24th, 25th. And only 2 teams from each region are going to be qualifying for Masters Madrid. So this is a really intense start to the year.
And we actually have a cool new venue and neighborhood that we get to visit now.
We're out of the S-Plex Center now into the S-Factory. So it's going to be a different spot. And
there's just a lot to enjoy there while you're waiting, while you're waiting for the matches to kick off, maybe afterwards.
Not only is it an awesome neighborhood, but it's super easy to get to. Right on one of the major subway line stops, so fans will have no problem finding it.
All right, let's start talking about kickoff itself. This is going to be a different format than what we've ever seen. It's going to be rapid fire here for these teams to try to make their way over to Masters Madrid. But we've got Icebox back into the meta. We've got Haven taken out for the first time ever. But we also have the additions of things like the Outlaw, the recent changes to Deadlock. ISO is available for play. Sunsets in the rotation. There is a lot to break down.
The topic on everyone's mind is the Outlaw. How does that change things?
So I think we're going to see the Outlaw definitely being mixed into the weapon rotations that players are going to be experimenting with. Deadlock, I'm not so sure just yet. Maybe on Ascent, maybe teams will try it. I want to see somebody cook up something. Who knows?
There's so many different combinations of changes happening in the current iteration of Valorant that whoever comes out on top well prepped for the depth of variety that can happen is going to look strongest team going into kickoff here for 2024.
So let's go ahead and talk right off the top with PaperX. How do you feel about PaperX with the changes that we've seen? Are you going to be full buying, fully investing into this team? Are you looking to save and wait and see how they look?
What we saw in the offseason looked pretty good, but then they got smashed by Sentinels in that grand finals. Well, but then again, it's PaperX. They're just trying around stuff, right? They're just trying new things. So I'm not quite at the operator level full buy, but I'm almost there.
Well, I am all in on PaperX. Full buy, 5 operators. Let's go with the whole
Shatter my economy.
There you go. This team has proven time and time again that they will adapt, right, to whatever is thrown at them, especially the core 4 that is remaining. Obviously, something just 1 year, but he's adapted quite quickly. I mean, he was thrown right onto the stage of Pacific 2023, and he adjusted very well to become the MVP of the very inaugural season. When the dust settles, this team is going to continue to come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm going to be, of course, right there with a full buy as well, because I think you'd have to be a lunatic to not back this squad. Banyet coming in, even though he didn't have the greatest display over at the AVL, they have now had way more time to further integrate him into the roster even more fully. So I think that this is still going to be a very scary team that you cannot underestimate. Well, we started off with the team that won Pacific. Let's go for the second place team this time around. It's DRX. A lot of changes.
Very, very big changes. This team, we thought they were going to stick with the whole core 5, the entire team, and they finally made these big changes that a lot of people were hoping would happen, but maybe not this specific variation.
It's pretty surprising to see them go with another young gun here with Flashback. He looks really good at times. Foxy9, a player that they had some confidence in at the beginning of the year, that started to wane as the year went on. They've done so well in the past at being able to get their fundamentals so well grounded. They can be innovative, so maybe with this tremendous amount of time they've had during the offseason, they can put it together.
But it's got to be daunting for someone like Flashback, right? You didn't get to really work with a team over a whole year through this entire grueling system to get used to playing against different opponents. So I have to wonder, as one of those academy players and one of the youngest players, how much can he prove within that first season.
I'm going to go for a bit of a half buy. Foundation is still laid for this team to continue to be at the top of Pacific. It's just, does it all come together in time for kickoff?
Speaking of young talent, we have another team who made some very big changes, bringing up 2 players that used to be on their academy roster in Zeta Division from Japan.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the most anticipated teams coming into the season. We've seen some glimpses from them back at Red Bull home ground. It seemed like there was a lot of potential there, so I'm curious to see how they look, how ready they're going to be coming out on stage for the kickoff of VCT Pacific.
I'm gonna save on this roster. I think what we can all agree are the 3 best players on Zeta coming in: Sugar, Zero, Depp, and Laz. I mean, that is a very solid foundation to build around. So you've got like these superstars coming onto this team. It's just, is the coaching staff going to be able to get them prepared and in time, especially for this kickoff? I think it's a tough task. And that's bringing in Carlau from Brazil. This guy working with Furia for a long time, having pretty good success over there, a strong FPS region, now bringing his talents over to Japan. This is something that I think Zeta really hit the nail on the head with.
And I think all of this, breathing a lot of fresh air, having these rookies who, at least during the offseason, showed some confidence to make their own plays, had some really crispy aim in certain rounds, I think I'm going to buy into this team.
Some things still need to be done for them to be able to go beyond, because we saw them get over to champions, and then we saw the struggles, much like another team that has been making some overarching changes, which is T1.
I'm going full buy. I'm going full buy on T1. Just right off the rip, no holding back. They bring in Rossi, that he brings this really positive mental attitude, but he fits in nicely. He's playing off his teammates really, really well. Yeah, and also Izu playing so well in Japan previously, in Challengers Japan, just absolutely dominating that region for a long time, and now coming up here, getting a chance, looking good already in the Tier 1 scene.
I see him with Excurate, the drive and the hunger to prove something, and of course his operator skills we've seen can really match anyone around the world, especially in Pacific. However, that only gets you so far. You have to have a better macro strategy, a better understanding of the entire map. I think they've proven they're very good at that. But how strong can they be? I think they'll be near the top, but maybe not quite at the top.
Let's talk about somebody else who was dominant in the Japanese scene last year. Jemkin, now joining RRQ.
Full buy. No hesitation.
That gets him. I think that I'm with you. We saw from RRQ so many wonderful moments throughout the season. It was really unfortunate that we weren't able to see them much more, in playoff runs at internationals. With Jemkin coming in, is this now a team that can make those runs, that can make these appearances at Madrid, at Shanghai, at Champions?
They bring in someone like Jemkin, who's proven that he absolutely has that factor to really overcome the odds and carry a team into victory when they need it most.
I mean, Jemkin in particular, there was no fear. When I went and talked to him, I'm like, man, you're coming in, you're playing in the T1, now you're coming up to the bigger stage. He's like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
I'm glad to hear Jemkin feels that way. Another thing we should mention is it's not just Jemkin. Estrella's coming in. He can actually call for a team, actually lead a team in communication, and he brings that structure that you need to make sure that you're on track. Also, fairly flexible player. They've announced that he's going to be one of the initiators. It should make this team a lot more free on the map.
I'm right there with you. It's one of those things where I wasn't expecting this, but then when I saw it, it started to kind of come together in my head.
I'm gonna half buy on this team. I just don't know how it's all gonna fit together. I'm a little worried, the group that they're in and with the way that things are gonna shake out, that maybe they're gonna fall just short here in the kickoff.
Okay, big changes, but there's been a couple of teams that basically revamped their entire roster, and one of them is going to be Talon Esports.
So many other faces that I would never have been able to guess. I mean, we have Governor coming in. We've got Lenny coming over from Team Secret. You've got Ban joining after his stint on T1. It's just been a wild ride for Talon.
But the rest of it are big question marks. I mean, yeah, Ban at times looked really good last year. He started out pretty slow, but as the year went on for T1, got much better. Is he gonna be able to replicate that success? The new coach with Frost, there's so many changes here.
For Governor, now you have to gel with 4 new players in a new region. You have to get used to playing against different styles from Pacific.
Maybe the most surprising thing here is a guy I touched on earlier, Lenny, right? He only had 1 game last year in VCT Pacific.
A high-stakes game.
Right, a very high-stakes game. No, so this is crazy to me. I mean, you're bringing in a guy who has very little experience in that role, as far as I'm aware, and now is going to be like thrust into that leadership role. How is he going to be able to handle that? Can he? I don't know.
I think it does speak to the level of confidence that he's going to be entering this season with. So I'm hoping that this is that redemption story. And not only am I just a stronger player, but I can also guide others to victory. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to be able to give us.
And perhaps that's the story of talent overall, right? All these players who want to prove that they deserve to be here. Maybe that hunger really drives them forward.
There's so many unknown quantities still with talent coming into the season that I think for me, I have to save. I have to wait and see how this team ends up looking after kickoff.
I want to pivot to another team that's made big changes. We have quite a few here. I want to go with GE. This year, I guess I'm on a half buy where I feel like there's some potential there, but can they really bring this all together in time for this year, especially for kickoff?
Okay, you're bringing in these veterans who are kind of the brains of the teams that they used to be on, right? We have Blaze King as well, who, wasn't the main caller, but was always able to offer a lot in terms of how the team works. And then you have Ben Kai, of course, Russ, we mentioned, he's IGL'd tons of times in the past over in EMEA. And then all of this is surrounding Polvi, who was a tier 2 rising star back in EMEA. And I think at Convergence, we saw, okay, why some fans in EMEA said this is a pickup worth rooting for.
I'm right there with you. I think that this is a squad that could have a couple of upsets, could be very stable, but is this going to be a team that reaches for the upper echelons of the standings? That's yet to be seen.
Now, we should also mention, of course, Lightning Fast, the lone remaining member of this team, and he's another player who didn't get too many chances in 2023 to show what he had. However, despite not having too much repetition and iteration on the stage, I liked the potential that he showed in 2023.
I have a lot of faith in Big Time and Spin as the coaches to try to get these guys into place. I really like the way they talk about the game, the way they think about the game. They've got some veteran talent. They've got some players who've been there, done that.
These are the 5 that we believe in. These are the 5 that we're going to focus on. And I think that that is the best thing that GE could do for themselves coming into this season.
But they just weren't able to ever close it out. Now they're saying, okay, we have players who are used to this. They are able to grind it out on stage against their opponents right across.
All right, so now we've covered some of the teams that have made the most changes that you possibly could. Let's go into one that made very minimal changes. Team Secret.
We just needed, some fresh firepower, a little bit more fresh perspective, and it's going to be coming with NDG. Let's talk about that player first. He used to be the 6th man on Now Esports, but didn't get to see him at Ascension. But I will say the couple matches and couple maps they played at Predator League, he looked very good, and he had some great moments to prove that he's got what it takes.
I really do like Jesse Vash. My concern with him was that when he wasn't on Sova, it became a real problem for them. Warbirds did at the beginning of the season. He had them fundamentally very sound, and they were able to take some good wins, but you weren't able to show good adaptation. You weren't able to keep up as the year went on. When Envy is your top player with firepower, and he's not your duelist, how is that going to work out?
Not changing the core too much, keeping pretty much everybody together other than Dubstep. I don't expect that the results are going to be that different.
But by putting NDG on that Sentinel, you're now solidifying Jeremy as that main duelist. How about some of the craziest highlights that Team Secret had? It was Jeremy. I mean, the way he's able to get some of this spray control on multiple people, really lock down a site. I think this opens them up to actually have overall a bit more firepower, right? I think the sum is going to be greater than the parts this time around.
This is going to be a big test, and a lot of that is going to fall on Warbird's shoulders to try to make sure that he can have them ready, that he can have multiple, just different iterations of prep ready to go, depending on what teams they're going to be playing against.
Now let's talk about a team entirely that has a lot to prove, and they've made some sweeping changes to try to do so. It's going to be DFM, Detonation Focus Me. Obviously a very rough year. And now they're saying we want to rebuild into an entirely new 5 to try to get things going again.
I think this team's going to be better than they were last year a little bit. I think, so therefore I'm going to go half save with them. I really think that for example, May in particular, a very, very strong mechanical player in Japan. But I think there's more overall potential on this team than there was last year is the way I look at this. I'm just, again, not exactly sure how, with everybody coming together like this off of different squads, how is that all going to fit together coming into 2024?
I don't say that to be a jerk, but they didn't pick up a win. What is going to come together for DFM? Who is going to be the 5-man core?
Can you make them come together? Can you find that chemistry? And so far at Riot 1, it didn't happen.
We don't know for sure, but if they can do that, if they can get those pieces into place, I really like the potential of this roster.
Let's talk about one of the other teams that was constantly hovering around the top of the standings in VCT. We had to see them in the playoffs, but never really had that break into the top 3. Let's talk about Gen G. I think one that's everybody globally is excited to see once again in Tier 1 is Lakia.
Everyone still talks about that clutch he had on Ascent, right? The Lakia zone, the Lakia moment, and then of course a very strong initiator as well to join another Korean squad, come back to home soil and try to prove himself alongside other veterans. As we saw Gen G announce themselves, he really proved himself during the trials, right? When he tried out for the team, he really said, okay, I have the mechanical skill to fit with this team.
Personally, I'm going with like a full buy on this team. I'm really excited that they can learn from what happened last year, you know, with that 4-0 start leading into things just completely falling apart as the year went on.
One of the players that we haven't really talked about yet is Munchkin, who is also on this roster, has had experience IGLing in the past, but he's also there alongside Lakia, so you have really good side calling potential between those two to come up with good adaptive ideas round over round to figure out how they're going to pick opponents apart.
You mentioned the IGLing. As far as we had been told on the Korean broadcast for Convergence, at that event, Lakia was doing a lot of the calling inside the game, but of course, who knows, that balance can always shift with Munchkin there with the experience he has. And then Charon also fitting in very well. You know, he looked a little quiet for the first couple rounds, and then he started to just fire on all cylinders and say, this is why I was picked up.
So last but not least is our Ascension qualifying team, Bleed.
Straight up, the biggest thing about Bleed right now that everyone's been talking about ever since it was announced is the probably largest signing of the offseason. Ye has joined Bleed. This is a player who back in 2022 was just the best in the world. I just hope that this project ends up working out for them and that we can see the return of El Diablo.
But I will say, I'm buying into this team. Sure, it's a different team from Ascension, but the core that's remaining, scary. And then you've got Crazy Guy, who I think his IGLing was very solid. And then you're adding in 2 players, right? Ye and Egos into this mix. I think it's a very solid start.
We don't know if they're past the growing pains stage yet, because we haven't seen it at all. And, you know, these 2 players coming in, where does Bleed take off compared to their previous performance back in Ascension? But I see the potential and the strength behind this team, and that's gonna, maybe it's a bit of a punt, but I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go for a buy on this.
We also have to mention the Outlaw, now in play, another long-range weapon, now with 2 chances.
Oh, yeah.
Ye now has 2 shots to take down people immediately back to back. I mean, these all are things, while not proven yet, point to a buy for me for Bleed Esports.
All right, well, now that we've established that there is a lot of different variables and it's impossible to tell who's going to be coming out on top, let's do some predictions. Our Group A teams are Global Esports, T1, Zeta, and Bleed.
The Global Esports, who's got great brains, but you don't have too much time to prep in between each match. And then Zeta Division, where, yeah, you have some rookies, but again, it looks like it's a bit of a long-term project. So I'm gonna go with T1 at least in first place.
I really like T1. I really like the stability of that team. I really like what I've seen from them so far. I like the confidence that they're bringing. I definitely expect them to be the team that comes out on top.
We can get into that one pretty quickly because honestly, I happen to agree with you both. I think that, but this is where the spiciness kind of comes into it, which is who is gonna be that second place team going through the play-ins. I'm gonna maybe lean on the young blood coming into this one. I think I'm gonna go with Bleed. They're going to deliver on it. It needs to be right up front.
My gut is telling me Zeta right now. I hope that those lessons that they learned at the end of last year are instantly put into place at the beginning of this year and they're able to come through and get that second place spot.
And it's really a 50-50 between Zeta and Bleed, but I lean more towards Bleed as well. They're a bit more hungry to do this all, you know, across all 5 players. And I think raw firepower 1-to-1, I still rate Bleed Esports just a bit higher.
Next up is Group B. DRX, Team Secret, DFM, and Talent. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. Teams with a lot of changes.
Because I haven't seen that much from Team Secret. It's just a one-off season tournament, really. I think that I will still go with DRX to make it out first.
But I think Team Secret definitely goes up in first here in this group. Now, whether they're able to go all the way to the finals is a whole different story, right? The not too many changes, that's what I think is gonna carry them over into first place.
Maybe Team Secret is gonna be a little bit better. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason, I'm just feeling in my gut DRX.
Okay, so we're a little split on the first place, but going into second place, we just have seen so little, and the little we saw from both DFM and Talent weren't that promising just yet. I think DRX is still stable enough to go up in second place.
Should we just say our second place prediction on the count of 3? Together?
Do it. Just at the same time?
Yeah.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Team
DFM.
Secret.
DFM, okay.
For some reason, I just really like this DFM team. Maybe I'm just such a May fanboy that I believe that he can like carry them over the line here. I think there's just too much talent on this team. If they can just kind of, you know, really buckle down, get it together, this team really has a ton of potential in my opinion.
My biggest concern, again, for Team Secret is going to be how does the prep go when they have to play multiple matches back to back to back. That's the one thing that's concerning me, but if that is something that they have tackled, then I don't think I have any cause for concern.
The last group, it's going to be the reigning winners of VCT Pacific, Paperthin, and then it is Gen G and RQ, once again intertwined in some weird twist of fate.
They can't get away from each other.
Yeah.
I love this round.
I mean, yeah, they were battling against each other to try to get into playoffs last year for Pacific, and now they meet again.
I think that just the consistency and what we've seen from Paperthin across 2023, they should, and I think they have to be, your first place prediction going out of this group.
I just have too much faith in Coach Alex. I mean, I think he's so good at getting the players to kind of believe into themselves and their own system. It's hard to imagine that they aren't the first place team here. Could it happen? Sure. But they're just too good, man, top to bottom.
Once again, put all of the hopium I have left in RRQ.
Wow.
Okay.
But we talked about theoretically why they should look better, a lot better than last year. And if RRQ can get out in first place from this group, that's already a great start. Sure, you have one more match, one more hurdle to get to. I think there's a good chance.
And this is where I think it gets even spicier, because you've got Paperthin and Gen G remaining. We have the two inseparables of RRQ and Gen G remaining.
Okay.
And I think that we have the harder decision, so I'm going to make you go first.
That's right.
Okay. And just like it happened in the earlier groups, I think this is one where, yeah, Gen G has a lot of potential, but all 5 players on Paperthin have the X factor. Not only good aim, but they're able to clutch it up when it's needed. They're able to go for these 1v2s, 1v3s, maybe even 1v5s. So that's where I'm going to give them the edge and say Paperthin still goes into, the potential play-ins and potential playoffs here for Kickoff.
I really think that this is the time for Texture. I think this is his moment where this is either it. Like, he's got to get it done this year, or he's just not actually that guy. He's not that duelist that we've talked about for a long time that could potentially be, the superstar. I'm big on this team. There's so much firepower on this team. I really think that Gen G is going to just barely continue to make RRQ's lives a living nightmare.
With my gut on this, I'm going to lean to RRQ. I think that they have way more solid of a foundation to build off of. I think that they've done nothing but make positive moves. I think Gen G very much have done the same exact thing, but I'm still going to go with RRQ. Well, I mean, now we've gone through, we've got our thoughts out there about who we think is going to be able to exit these 3 groups and get into the playoffs. Who are your top 2 teams to go to our first international Masters Madrid in 2024?
I'm going with RQ and T1.
Okay.
I think RQ and T1 have made sweeping improvements, and they're gonna go to an international tournament to prove that Pacific can be one of the best regions.
Okay, you're looking at me like, yeah, that's my turn. Paperthin T1. I agree with you on T1. Paperthin I still think is going to be fine. It's not going to be quite that same look, I suspect, but it should be very, very similar flavor.
For me, I'm also going to go with T1. I think that T1, they've just looked so very good. I think that they have a really solid foundation, and I'm expecting that they will be able to make it over to yet another international event. The team alongside them, though, I will go against you both because I am
he can't get away from it.
I'm going to go with Team no, it's DRX. I'm going to go with DRX. I think that I just believe. I just have the faith. I like what I've been seeing from them previously in the offseason. It hurts to see some of the changes that have been made, but all I can do is hope that these are for the best. It could be Bleed, it could be Secret, it could be RQ, but I might as well just go with the funny DRX meme and predict them. So there we have it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to our VCT Pacific Night Market segment. We have plenty more content coming at you guys throughout the year, so make sure you stay tuned, and maybe we'll have some special guests alongside us throughout the way.
Yeah, that could be very exciting. And of course, you heard our takes here for 2024. Let us know down in the comments below who had the right reads on all the teams, and also who's going to make it out of VCT Pacific Kickoff.
Yeah, and make sure you guys do not miss the start of the season, February 17th. You can check out the information on where you can view it down below, so make sure you look down there to get what you need.
Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you again once VCT Pacific kicks off on February 17th.